Just gonna wait for some people to finish connecting to the audio. Okay. Oh, happy 2023, everyone. Hope we're all writing the right year. Still working on that myself, like 2022. Nope, we're working on that. Okay, so I am Becca Phillips. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator. And if you have any technical issues, feel free to reach out to me via email, and I will drop that in the chat now. And then I'm going to turn things over to Katie and Carrie to introduce themselves and kind of get us started.
Thanks, Becca. Are you gonna run the slides?
Yes.
Hi guys. While Becca pulls that up, I'm Carrie Staten. I'm the director of WVU Tab, and we are excited to have you guys here. This is the first in our new series aimed at current and particularly today new EPA Brownfields grantees. And we'll talk a little bit about the bigger context of that. But today we're going to talk mostly about reporting because it is reporting time. So we all have reports due at the end of January. And we thought it might be good, especially for the newbies or new staff on longtime grantees, to talk through that grant process, because I know for me, when we were a new assessment grantee, I felt like I could use some more guidance on what EPA was looking for from me to report on, and hopefully today will be helpful. The other sort of thing that we're trying to do is build a space for grantees to work and interact with each other. So there are, I know, some veteran grantees on the line today who've had grants for a while. There are some brand new folks who haven't had grants before or are new to their organizations. And so we want to make sure that there's a little bit more connection, particularly with the grantees within your state, but also across the region, so that as questions come up, you always can reach out to us. You can definitely talk to your project officers, but it sometimes can be helpful to talk to your peer grantees. And so we want to try to help facilitate some of those conversations. And so a couple ways we're going to do that today is that we do have a few slides to go over some like the basics and the overview of your first quarter report, but we're going to have a lot of time at the end for questions and conversation. And I would invite anybody who's here who's familiar with the grant reporting process to chime in as you feel inspired to do so. And we do have a small crew by design today, because this was sort of not by invitation only, but targeted specifically at grantees. So we do have the ability to just chat. And so to kick us off, I'd like to invite everyone to introduce yourselves. I'm gonna start with our team. You already heard from Becca, and I'll let Katie go, and then we're gonna call out and just ask everyone to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from, what community and state, and what kind of grant you have, and whether you're a new or longtime grantee. So with that, I'm gonna toss to Katie C on our team.
Thanks, Carrie. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie C. It's nice to be here with you today. We look forward to providing you with some information and just giving you the opportunity to hopefully connect with one another. I will be going over some highlights that we hope will be helpful, for you. And like I say, at this time, if you would like to introduce yourselves to one another, we again hope that that's a beneficial takeaway from today's webinar.
Thanks, Katie. So since everybody's screens probably look different and are in different orders, I'm just going to call out. And the other thing I would say is, as we're introducing folks, think about what are your questions specifically about reporting and your new grant right now. And you can go ahead and toss those in the chat, and we will try very hard to hit all of those. Or if we are not able to hit everything, we will circle back with you after the call. So first up on my list after Katie is Matt Ford.
Good afternoon. I'm Matt Ford with Greenbrier Environmental Group. I'm a consultant, but I'm on the call because we're helping the Fayette County Commission with their community-wide assessment grant.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And that works nicely because next on my screen is Amy Dangerfield.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Hi, I'm Amy Dangerfield, and I work for the Fayette County Commission, and we have an assessment grant, and we just chose our consultant to assist us, and that was Greenbrier Environmental, and we're just getting started on everything. And this is my first foray into Brownfields grants.
Excellent. And those guys are both talking from Fayette County, West Virginia, just to
Correct, yes, sorry.
Chris Linger.
Morgantown Utility Board. Got a team of us here. And we're working with Greenbrier as well. And this is definitely my first experience with this kind of project.
And you guys have a cleanup grant.
Correct.
Great, thank you. Aaron Britton.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erin Britton, the West Virginia DEP Brownfields Program Manager. We've had multiple assessment grants over the years, and we just received the $2 million state tribe assessment grant as of October 1st last year.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Blair Jeffress. Did I say that right?
Yes, that's correct. Hello, everyone. My name is Blair Jeffress, and I am the operations manager with the Halifax County IDA. We received an assessment grant, I believe, and I'm pretty new to this whole process, so I'm excited to learn and to meet you all.
Great, we're glad to have you. Jenna French. I've never felt like more of an elementary school teacher in my life doing roll call. Jenna, are you able to introduce yourself? All right, we're going to come back to you. If you're able to unmute, then I'll keep an eye out. And if I see that, we'll let you introduce yourself. Randy? All right, Craig, I believe you joined a few minutes late. We're just doing quick introductions of where you're calling from and what kind of grant you have, and if you're a newbie or if you've had grants before.
Hey, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm actually new to the EPA. I'm going to be a project officer, and I'm just on line to gain some experience.
Great. With Region 3?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Amazing. All right. And I see Jenna had to take a call. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Jenna and Randy, if you want to introduce yourselves in the chat as you have the opportunity, that would be great. But we're going to go ahead and get started because we do want to make sure we leave a lot of time for discussion and questions. And we are recording, and that'll be available as well as these slides. And I can see that Becca has the transcript on. I would just note that that is a computer creating the transcript and not a human. So if there's I've already seen a couple of weird things. Sometimes my Southern West Virginia accent doesn't translate to computer language, but hopefully that is helpful to folks as they need it. So as we said, we're WVU TAB, which is the Technical Assistance to Brownfields Communities provider for EPA Region 3. We're funded by EPA to provide support to communities and organizations across the Mid-Atlantic region on brownfields, including supporting folks applying for and implementing EPA brownfield grants. We do all sorts of things, and we'll talk a little bit more about the different services that we have at the end of our presentation. But all of our services are completely free. We are here to help you. So you can always reach out to us, and all of our contact information, again, will be available in the slides that you'll receive afterwards. But there is never any charge, and we will do our very best to help however we can, or to help get you to someone who can if we are not able to. Next slide. And Katie's going to walk us through some of the reporting elements for your grants.
Thanks, Carrie. So I am a big picture person, and I think about how the reporting piece fits into your overall project. So I hope that this slide illustrates that somewhat. And so that's why you see multiple arrows with the cooperative agreement and work plan kind of encompassing the other steps. So, you start with your cooperative agreement with the EPA and your work plan, and that includes your scope of work, and your scope of work does lay out your outputs and your outcomes. So this is going to be how you measure the progress of your project throughout the life of the grant. It includes budget detail, and then also the selection of your qualified environmental professional, or QEP, as you see it listed. Next, and I guess in not necessarily a particular order, but you have reporting for quarterly and then also your final report. And that includes your cooperative agreement recipient. So I just want to note that you'll see in a couple of slides here, we have some terms and definitions that we hope will be helpful. And you'll see again, CAR spelled out. So CAR, and apologize, I have a typo here. I'm calling it LRS because that is state specific for West Virginia. And that, so that is the specific term here for us for our QEP. And so under, again, your reporting process for quarterly and final, you enter your information into acres. So each of you is going to have to set up your acres account. So you'll have your own respective acres. The person or the entity with the cooperative agreement is considered the owner. So the information that the owner sees is a little bit different than the QEP, but that is, you as the owner set that up and you can share the information so that your QEP can help contribute information into acres. So as you establish your reporting process, want to make sure that you determine what are the best project tracking tools for you. We are a recipient here at the Northern West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center. We are the recipient of a community assessment grant. And so it's honestly taken us a little bit of time to get into a groove and find a process that works the best for us. We actually happen to use Airtable. It's a free software project tracking, and that allows us to communicate with one another. It does real-time updates, so I can be in it at the same time as Carrie. Then we've also been able to share it with our QEP and they can enter information. So again, that works best for us. You may find that an Excel spreadsheet may work for you, and that is perfectly fine. But all that is important is that you find something that you're comfortable with to help track that process. So your quarterly report is due within 30 days of the end of the quarter. So that's why here at the end of January, your report is going to be due, same for us, for October to December. And then also at the end of your project, your final report will be due. So when it comes to project work, again, that's also under the umbrella of your cooperative agreement and work plan, is communicating regularly with your QEP. So you want to check in with them to see, hey, what's the status of the phase 1, phase 2 assessment? Is there any planning activity that's going on? What has happened there? You want to make sure you're checking in with that to see, make sure you are tracking with the same information that they are. You both get busy, everyone has multiple projects going on at one time, certainly. So that's why, you just want to check in with them, make sure the progress is moving along as it should, and see if you need to make any adjustments. Also communicate with them about, like I said, I touched briefly on planning activities. So it's not just if you have an assessment grant, for example, that allows you to do your phase 1 and phase 2 assessments, but it also allows you to do planning activities that are approved under the EPA. And that includes things such as a market study, infrastructure evaluation, and site reuse vision. And then also certainly want to make sure you're always keeping in mind your community outreach. That is important to keep stakeholders and communities updated on the progress of the project. So if you are, when you prepared your cooperative agreement and the work plan, you should be indicating how many meetings you're going to have, maybe the type, are they going to be virtual and or in person? So you want to make sure you're keeping tabs on that and keep the information up to date on how folks can participate. So for us, we keep that information updated on our website. And as the project has progressed, we've been able to keep folks informed with using their email addresses, and then also social media. So again, the community outreach piece is always important. In our case, it's to keep people apprised of the progress of the project, but also to let folks know how they may be able to take advantage of the grant that we have. Next slide.
So before we get into the next slide, Katie, really quickly, I forgot to do our pre-test. So I have just a quick two question poll that we're just using as part of our evaluation as educators. And so I'm just going to launch this really quickly. If everybody could just, as you sit, before you hear anything from us today, rate your current understanding of the Brownfield grant reporting process, and also your understanding of the TAB resources that are available. And you'll see these questions again at the end. And then do you want me to do the QEP one now too, Katie?
Go for it.
Okay, I'll give you guys a second to finish that one. And then I was trying to do. Okay. All right. So we're going to end that one. Thank you very much. And just quickly, just to give us a sense of where folks are in the process, let us know if you have already hired a qualified environmental professional, or if that's something you're in the process of doing, or you still need to get that taken care of. I know everybody handles that differently. So great. Lots of QEPs already on board. That's great to hear. And obviously our EPA friends don't need to answer this poll. All right. Okay, yeah, I think that's everyone. Katie, I'm just going to share this with everyone so that you can see as well that about 2/3 have already hired, and then the final third are in the process. So that's great. That's great news. You guys are right on track. All right, and I'll stop. I'll give you the floor back.
Thank you. Terms and definitions, I just want to hit a few highlights here. And again, just hope that this slide, we hope that this PowerPoint is going to be a helpful tool for you after the fact, after today's webinar. So ACRES is the reporting tool that EPA uses. It stands for Assessment, Cleanup, and Redevelopment Exchange System. It is how you do your reporting. Once you have your cooperative agreement, you set up your account, and again, your QEP will set up the account so that you can both be entering the information that is applicable to you. In our situation, our QEP enters the technical information of the assessment and any planning work. So they go ahead and enter that information. Also, the cooperative agreement recipient, or CAR, that is the recipient of the EPA Brownfield grant that signed the cooperative agreement with the EPA. So again, in that situation, that is us here at INVAC. And finally, just want to say, which we've already touched on a bit, is the qualified environmental professional, or QEP. You're going to see that highlighted. That's someone who has the specific education, training, and relevant experience necessary to exercise professional judgment to develop opinions and conclusions regarding conditions indicative of releases or threatened releases of hazardous substances on a property. Next slide. When it comes to the reporting process, we just kind of pulled out some highlighted information we believe along the way that, again, is helpful to kind of give you an understanding of the process. So again, first you establish tracking and reporting tasks for the recipient and the QEP. I touched on that again briefly. We like and are comfortable with Airtable. And we also use a Word document. Before we enter information into ACRES, we also happen to keep a Word document going that we communicate, that Carrie and I mostly communicate with back and forth. It just allows us to edit that document outside of ACRES. And so when we actually get ready to enter the information into ACRES, we are able to copy and paste that to ACRES. So that's just something that works for us. You may find it helpful to enter directly into ACRES, and that's certainly fine. Honestly, I kind of do a hybrid myself. So again, you set up your ACRES account, both as the recipient of the cooperative agreement and the QEP. Determine the tracking tool to use throughout the grant cycle. Again, it just may simply be Excel, and then it may be Airtable. And so then you're going to, when you set that up, you want to figure out a strategy that works for you. I think I touch on this, or the slides touch on this a little bit later, but you want to make sure that you are keeping track throughout the process. You don't want this to be something that you're looking back on now here on January 9th, going back and looking for from the 1st of October. So you're going to be doing yourself a solid, as they say, if you enter this information either as you go with the tasks, or maybe every week or every couple of weeks. So that's why, again, just find that system that works for you. If it's Excel, some project tracking software, and you just use that gradually as you go. And again, also anyone else on your team who may be helping with this process, you can allow or ask them to help along the way too, because it's much easier to be able to adjust and make adjustments and figure out if there's anything else that's missing or that you need to work on as you go along the way. You don't want to have to wait and do that a couple of weeks, and you may not be able to do it a couple of weeks before your project is due. Track your budget and check with the QEP as needed. You know, on our end, we are keeping tabs of the invoices that come in from the QEP. And so you just want to keep checking with them to make sure you have them as they are ready to enter into the process. You're going to find that sometimes the invoices you receive are not within the quarter you are reporting on. That's okay. It may be for a previous quarter, but you want to make sure you indicate that in your report. So again, it's okay if it happened. Obviously, we would love for it to all happen within the reporting quarter. May not be the case, but just make sure that that's clearly indicated in the report. Refer back to your cooperative agreement and the work plan often to make sure the activities and the outputs are completed. Again, it's much easier to do this as you go along the way. If you committed to do 12 phase 1 assessments and you're only up to 4, and you may have, you know, a year left in your grant process, you may you're going to need to take a look at that to see what you need to do, what kind of outreach you should be doing to try to see if you can meet that goal as best you can. Submit your FFRs as directed by your project officer. Sorry about that. Your EPA project officer no later than 30 days after the end of each reporting period. And there's a link in there that takes you to those federal reporting forms. So again, just hope that's a helpful tool. I just realized that I went the wrong way on this reporting process. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so anyway, follow the timeline and it'll make a little more sense. But if we go back up to enter project relating tasks as you go or weekly, that's where that box was. I'm sorry, guys, it's been a Monday here. Also complete your SF 425 form within 90 days of the budget period end date. If you have any questions with that, you can contact us and let us know. And then finally, at the end of your project, you're going to submit your final project through ACRES. You will find, and I also indicate this later, that in ACRES you cannot upload attachments. So you can also you can submit your report through ACRES. If there are any attachments that you believe you need to include with your report, you can send those separately to your project officer. All right, Carrie.
Thank you. All right, any questions so far, particularly on the reporting process? You can just unmute and ask it. All right, we're gonna keep moving. Becca, the next slide, please. All right, so this is again another tool that we use to track our outputs. It lists all of the activities that were pulled straight from our proposal and ultimately our work plan, when our expected time frame was, and the outputs and outcomes in there, and then any accomplishments from that quarter. I'm pretty sure that I borrowed this format from a peer grantee, and it just, again, like the Airtable that Katie has referenced, is just one of the ways that we use as a grantee to keep track of everything as we go and to be able to turn it into the report. Because as you may know, if you've already gotten into ACRES, it's not a really great way to upload any attachments or anything like that, but it can be helpful as you're aggregating everything that's happened over those 3 months, to have a place to kind of pull it together, and then use that to write your quick update and the actual paragraph that goes into the ACRES reporting framework. And then it also lets you kind of see where you are in the bigger scheme to know how many more deliverables you have left, how you're doing on your timeline and things like that. And so this is just one way to do that. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a table that kind of lists everything and lets you kind of track as you go. And this is an actual screenshot of our assessment tracking. Next slide. Excuse me. I'll go ahead and keep this. EPA has some really great guidance and resources available related to acres. And so while we don't currently have any acres trainings planned, that is in part because they do such a good job directly from the acres team at EPA in providing those trainings. So you can see there's some getting started sessions that are live that are happening, not in time for this reporting process, but in February and April and June. And those are all a great resource. There's also quite a lot of documentation and information on the acres homepage that gives you some information on how to do that. I don't know that we've talked too much yet today, or will be talking much today about the property profile forms. I think since this is your first reporting period, you're unlikely to have a lot of that to report on this time. But those are going to be specifically on assessment grants, and likely RLF, although Aaron would know more about that than I do. The information that you're going to enter specifically about the properties that you're working on. So there's sort of two levels of reporting that you're going to do. There's your overall, which we've spent a lot of time talking about, and then some more property specific information. And that's one of the places where we find the QEP to be especially helpful. They're doing a lot of that property specific work. They're doing your assessments, or they're doing helping manage your remediation work. And so it can be a lot quicker and more efficient to have them just put that information directly into acres. And then you review it certainly as the cooperative agreement recipient to make sure that everything's accurate and there's nothing missing and that it matches your understanding. But that's definitely a place where I would recommend, especially for new grantees, to lean on your QEP a little bit. Next slide.
All right, so we've provided just a few screenshots. There are certainly too many screenshots to take within acres, so we just provided a couple to hopefully, again, be a resource for you. So first off, after you have logged into acres, this is what you see as your dashboard. As Carrie said, this is also an exact screenshot of my particular acres account. So you can see it's welcoming me. It tells me that I have no work packages to review. And so then also it's telling me that I have 0 open quarterly reports. That was at this time. I do actually have one open at this time. The screenshot was taken before I actually created it. It does tell you how many cooperative agreements you have, and also for us, it's telling us the total number of properties. Those resources that Carrie was talking about earlier can be found down here, as one starting point. There are certainly other resources to look for EPA acres information within their website, but it's nice that this is very handy right here, and also lets you know about the upcoming training. So Carrie mentioned the upcoming training for basic acres training, but there also happens to be some additional training for those who are familiar with acres and maybe want to see what else you can do, how else you can take advantage of it. Next slide, please. So this shows your cooperative agreement. You can see highlighted here, it gives you the cooperative agreement number here. So this is the information you're going to need. This tells you who your project officer is. It tells you the funding for your actual project. And then you can see in the blue down here, it talks about the properties that fall within your project. And again, for us, that happens to be 10. And you can see it lists the property, and then the action shown over here is where you can enter the data. And again, for us, our QEP does enter that more technical specific information, and we go in and review it. Next slide. When it comes to managing the quarterly report, this is really helpful here because you can see on the right-hand side, you can go back and refer to your previous quarterly reports. Don't be thrown. When Carrie and I were refreshing ourselves on this to get you ready for this, we went, why on earth is this showing, more recent information, but it accumulates. So you're going to see that you may start to look at your first report and question, why is it showing this much information? We hadn't done that yet. Well, that's because it's just continuing to add previous information on there. So don't be confused as we were briefly. But that's a very good tool to have, again, to be able to go, and it pulls up a PDF. So unfortunately, you cannot go back in and do any type of edits, but it is helpful to be able to have that to refer back to. Next slide.
So just some general takeaways, as a reminder of the things that we've talked about this afternoon. Definitely make sure you're coordinating with your QEP to make it clear what the expectations are about who is handling which part of the tracking and reporting process. Don't wait until January or April or et cetera, to gather all of that information. It's going to be a lot easier for yourself if you're tracking it as you go. And then getting sort of a quick snapshot as you're writing a report. Along those same lines, figure out what good project management method or tool is going to work best for you. And we've talked about a few of the options here today. And always look back at your cooperative agreement and your work plan to make sure that you are doing what you said you would do. It can be easy to get into the work and feel like you're following the spirit of it, but forget about the specific deliverables that you talked about. So making sure that you're closely connecting to that. And remember that when you're reporting your financials, there may be sometimes a lag between when the work happens versus when you're billed for it versus when you actually pay those bills. And that's okay. Just make sure it's clear what you're reporting as you go. And one thing that I don't think that has come up explicitly, but I know we've run into it because of some of those lags, and I've heard about other grantees running into it. Sometimes because of those lags, you may need to make some adjustments looking backward at your financial report in particular in a future quarter. And as Katie said, you cannot go back in the ACRES system and just edit your report. And what we've been told by our project officer is that you can just kind of update that in your most recent report, explain it. And if you run into that, I personally manage our financial reporting, and I have dealt with a lot of that. And so if you run into that in the future and you want to talk through it, I'd be happy to talk through with you. It's kind of hard to talk about in the hypothetical, but anytime you need to provide an update, most of the time, my understanding from the POs is that they're going to want you to just explain it in your next report versus going backwards and changing the report from the time before. So it is possible to have reports reopen from behind like previous quarters. We've had to do that once, but you do have to request that it be opened. It's not something that your PO can do for you. You have to go through the ACRES. And so I think it's just from a technical perspective, not the easiest thing to do. And so the easiest thing is just to update your provide any updates in your most current report. Next slide.
Thank you. Okay,
ahead.
takeaway information for ACRES. So the ACRES work package, just you would have seen that again on the dashboard and the screenshot that we provided. One experience we had already was packages can become locked for editing if it remains in your ACRES dashboard with no review. So if that happens, contact a project officer. Got to admit, this happened to me when I was new to this process with the reporting, and it was not a big deal. I just did need to reach out to our project officer, and he had to unlock it. And I've since made a note for myself to make sure that I'm always paying attention to see if there is a work package. And a work package, again, I believe it's covered in the terms and definitions slide, but that is any edits that you make to the information within your work plan. It may only be about one particular property. It may be adding a brand new property, or it may be some updates to all the properties in general. But when that information is done, you do need to go in and approve that. And the packages are used for, oh gosh, I see I missed finalizing the ad here. Or this button here, and I apologize. That's again just what I was starting to say, is it could be for one property, or it could be for multiple information on multiple properties. So within the ACRES view, just want to note that again, you as the cooperative agreement recipient, your view is a little bit different than your QEP. Again, because you as the CAR you are the owner, and so you share that you share the information with the QEP so that they can update the information on your behalf. Again, attachments cannot be uploaded to ACRES. They can be emailed separately to your project officer. And then when entering the new information into ACRES, be sure to search for property first to ensure there are no redundancies. So, don't just assume that you have not added that property in unless you know for certain. But, if you are taking over the reporting process, or there's been some type of change where you're just not certain, you can do a search within ACRES that just allows you to see if any information, if an account has been created for that particular property before. So just make sure you do that.
All right, so we just threw a lot of information at you. We do have a couple more slides specifically about tab resources, but before we get into that, we wanted to pause and open the floor up for your questions for anything. If there's folks on the line who've done this before and have any hot tips that we may have forgotten, we would welcome those as well. One thing I would say that I did not know that project officers were going to be here, and I don't know the new project officers on the line today, so I'm not buttering them up. I'm very excited that you guys are here. But the project officers in Region 3, in my experience, are incredibly helpful. And they are there. I mean, you all would have seen in your cooperative agreements this phrase of substantial involvement. They will help you figure it out. And so we are here. We are a resource for you. But you definitely, I don't know if you've had other grants where you had in different agencies or different organizations. Sometimes the project officers are not as involved as closely as EPA project officers can be. And it may feel like you can't, it may feel intimidating to ask them questions and not want to look like you don't know the answers to things, but that you should not be concerned about that here. The project officers want to help you figure it out as well. They, however, have not always seen as much of acres from the side of the grantees because they're not grantees. And so they can help with a lot of things, and they can definitely help significantly in your implementation. But there may be places where it is easier for us, especially since we have used acres from the assessment grantee perspective to help you. But I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help from all of the places that you're talking to, because we are all here to meet that mission together of redeveloping brownfields. So any questions, you can raise your hand, you can just chime right in, drop in the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with. Excuse me. All right. Not seeing any questions or hands raised. So keep thinking about them. We're going to just finish out our slides. And then we do have one other poll and one other question that I couldn't get to work in the poll. But we will just dive back in. Becca. So as we've said, I just kind of rambled about it a bit. WVU Tab is here to help you not only on your grant reporting or grant implementation, but any of your brownfield questions. And we can help figure out the best way to do that. Generally, our resources are designed to be responsive. So they are not prescriptive. We don't have like, this is what we do and whatever you need has to fit into our boxes. We have sort of general boxes, but we want to make sure that we're able to answer questions as they come up and provide support in the way that makes the most sense on the ground. Excuse me. So our sort of 4 areas of support are brownfield education, which are trainings and webinars, kind of like this one. We'll talk a little bit more about some other topical webinars we have coming up in the next couple of months. Resource identification, which is grant writing assistance, grant review, and resource roadmaps. We may have helped. I think we reviewed some of the grants for the folks on the line. We also provide support for local brownfield programs. So things like developing your inventory, answering specific questions on sites, broader technical support, understanding technical reports that you get like your phase 1 and phase 2s, and then project development and design assistance, which is site specific and includes design support through our partnership with the Davis College and their community engagement lab. And all of those things are available at any time on a sort of rolling basis. The project design support tends to follow the academic calendar, but you can request it at any time. And while that may sound, sometimes I think if you're not in the midst of academia and we sort of straddle the line between academia and everybody else, it can feel like that calendar doesn't line up, but in reality, a semester is only 3 months. So it is kind of comparable to how long that kind of assistance would take in other circumstances. And we can help connect you with those folks upon request. Next slide. As I said, we've got some other upcoming webinars. The first one on January 30th is Brownfield and Grants 101. So this is sort of an introduction to what even is a Brownfields EPA grant. Obviously, you guys have figured that one out, but you can tell your friends, or maybe you're thinking about applying for a cleanup grant next time and you don't know everything you need to know yet. This the idea of this series is to get folks ready as early as possible so that when the guidelines drop in the late summer, early fall, you're already ready to go and ahead of the game. Additionally, we'll be doing some sort of hot topic webinar series focused around public health this spring. So we've got a really great partner at the School of Public Health at West Virginia University, and they'll be working with us to develop some great brownfield public health topics. So stay tuned for that. And you can go ahead and register for that January 30th one, or you can keep an eye on our website and there'll be more information on how to register for those 2 webinars coming soon. And that's our contact information. The best way to get our information on all of the things we've talked about today is through our newsletter. So if you sign up for that newsletter, it is a sort of monthly to bi-monthly. It is not a weekly or daily. You will not have an inbox filled with WVU tab messages. You also, again, can always reach out to our team. We're happy to chat or walk through any questions at any point. And we'd love to see the work that you're doing. So if it's helpful for us to come visit and work through some things, help your broader community stakeholders understand your grant or the brownfield process, that's another kind of support that we'd be happy to help with. So that's me. Katie, anything to add?
No, Carrie, I think you did a great job summarizing that. Again, just thank you everyone for attending today. We hope that this was somewhat helpful, and we just appreciate your support.
Yeah. So I'm gonna roll our host test, which is questions are gonna look very familiar from when we kicked off, just to get a sense of how things went today. The other question I would have in the chat, if you have thoughts, and you can always again email us with your thoughts, is what other topics as a grantee specifically would be helpful to you. So we've got some other things in the hopper coming up, and I don't have that list in front of me. I don't know if Katie has it, but what kinds of things would be helpful to know? What kinds of connections would be helpful to have? We will be in Virginia and West Virginia and Pennsylvania and possibly Maryland. Those are all of the states in our region that have brownfields conferences. We will be having in-person grantee meetings so that folks can meet each other. We'll be with project officers, are usually at those events, and we can go over some other topics and some other opportunities just to connect with one another. And so in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, those events are going to be in September, and in Virginia, that will be in June, and there will be more information coming about that conference very soon. We're very excited. I can tell you it will be mid-June, and it will be Danville. And it's going to be a great time. So those are some other opportunities to connect both with TAB, but also with your peers in your state specifically. So again, if you could just finish the poll, take this poll, and then in the chat, if you have any thoughts about discussion topics or things you have questions about related to your grant implementation, please let us know that in the chat or by email as you think of it.
I will let you know that because this is kicking off to be a new grant recipient webinar today for helping you with your first quarter reporting, it's the actually this particular webinar is kind of dropped in. So really, I believe we would kind of say that this is going to kick off in May. So for the first time, we're going to be hosting a webinar that we're of course still working on, but it's going to be geared to those who are brand new right out of the gate, have just found out that they received an EPA grant. And so our intention with that webinar is going to be helping folks set up their co-ops and their cooperative agreement, because that does need to be turned around rather quickly. So our goal is to be able to prepare you in advance so that you're going to be ready to go with that. And so that'll be what I would say would actually be kind of first in the series of helping those who are new grant recipients. But because we were not there for that for you, we do hope that this is somewhat helpful. And then as the year progresses, then of course this will still remain a webinar that we provide as a service.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us. Keep in touch if you need anything. We're going to hang out for a couple of minutes. So if you have a question you want to ask a little more offline, you're welcome to do that. And we will send out these resources in the next couple of days. And they'll probably come either from the TAB account directly or from Becca. Thanks everyone. Happy Monday.